They told me to make a strong first impression. Don't bow too low, the ambassador said. Don't look directly at the Queen's eyes for more than 3 seconds, and whatever you do, do not mention cheese. Naturally, the first thing I did when I entered the Elendari High Court was sneeze, trip on my cloak, and land in a semi-prostrated heap at the base of the Queen's dais, eyes locked on hers for what was definitely a solid 6 seconds. The silence that followed could have been bottled and sold as tension, extra strength. I stood, coughed, adjusted my collar, and said, "Sorry, earth pollen allergy, very aggressive spores on your landing platform." I gestured vaguely toward the open dome, where crystalline vines glowed faintly around levitating archways. They looked like something out of a fantasy holoflick. If that fantasy holoflick was directed by someone who thought gravity was a suggestion and color palettes should be rotated by the hour. Queen Sarilith Vey tilted her head, expression unreadable. 1,000 eyes watched from above, the nobles stacked along tiered balconies like elegant predatory birds. Every single one of them had those long, slightly curved ears that flicked subtly with emotion. I had no idea what each twitch meant, but I was 90% sure the ones aimed at me screamed who let this bipedal fungus into the throne room. Behind the Queen, standing half a pace to the right, was Commander Aralva. She was taller than I expected, armored in a sleek blend of obsidian plating and shimmering deep violet fibers. Her hand rested casually on the hilt of a double-ended vikesh, a weapon I had only seen in dossiers and nightmares. Her ears were motionless, her stare was. The Queen finally spoke. "You are the emissary from Terra." "I am your radiance," I said, offering the correct bow this time. "Jacob Reese. I bring greetings and goodwill from the Terran Council." And a small crate of handcrafted chocolate that your customs team decided was a biological hazard. The joke didn't land. No one laughed, not even a polite titter. Tough crowd. "Terra's goodwill is noted," she said. "And your unconventional entry to my court is forgiven. You are aware of our customs regarding first contact between sovereign dignitaries." "Absolutely," I lied. I had skimmed the protocols between zero-gravity meal breaks and orbital turbulence-induced nausea. Something about ceremony, something about honor, something about weight. Was this the part with the "I, Commander Aralva of the Royal Guard," came a voice like finely honed steel, "issue the right of proven worth. Let the challenger stand, and let his strength speak for his presence." Oh no, this was that part. Aralva stepped forward, unsheathing the twin blades of her vikesh. The light in the room caught the edges and made them shimmer with unholy elegance. The audience shifted in their seats, a wave of barely restrained excitement rippling through the balconies. The right of proven worth wasn't just protocol. It was bloodsport diplomacy with a sprinkle of public theater. My translator drone buzzed at my shoulder, helpfully whispering, "You are being challenged to a ceremonial duel. Standard refusal protocol is to place hand over chest and say, 'I yield to the guard's honor.'" I looked at Aralva. She was expressionless, composed, and definitely not expecting me to say yes. So of course I said, "I accept." A gasp rippled through the chamber like someone had dropped a grenade of surprise in a library. The Queen's ears flicked ever so slightly. Aralva's nostrils flared. I thought I saw her mouth twitch, but it could have been a glitch in my nerves. "Very well," said Sarilith. "The duel will commence at dawn. Weapon form shall be chosen by the challenger." I opened my mouth, closed it, turned toward the drone. "What's a weapon form?" The drone chirped helpfully. "The traditional options are blade, staff, or combat interface exoframe. The third is generally considered overkill, unless both participants consent to full neural sync." "Staff," I said without thinking. "Less slicing, more whacking. Classic Earthstick foo." The Queen nodded. "So it is chosen." As I turned to leave the court, Aralva's voice followed me, low and razor-sharp. "You will regret that choice, Terran." I glanced over my shoulder. I regret most of my choices. This one just has better lighting. The embassy courtyard wasn't really a courtyard so much as a floating platform. with simulated gravity and decorative vines that smelled like burnt metal. My training partner was a humanoid AI in a too-tight jumpsuit who introduced itself as Riga and had the unfortunate tendency to narrate every move in second person. "You attempt a lateral block," Riga said as I flailed. "It is unsuccessful. Your wrist angle is suboptimal." "I know it's suboptimal, Riga. I'm from a planet where staffs are mostly for hiking." "You stumble again. This may indicate neural latency or poor life decisions." "Both," I muttered. My arms were sore. My pride was shattered. My chances of not being humiliated in front of the Elendari court were rapidly approaching zero. At dinner, I was served a bowl of gelatinous purple cubes that pulsed faintly and whispered when poked. I didn't ask what they were. I just sighed, picked up a cube with my chopsticks and said, "Cheers to diplomacy." The cube hummed, then exploded in a puff of perfumed mist. My eyebrows took the brunt. "Facial disfigurement," Riga commented, floating in beside me, "may arouse sympathy in your opponent." "Great, add that to the list of battle strategies. Exploding hors d'oeuvres." The night before the duel, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was nervous. Okay, yes, very nervous. But also because Elendari night cycles involved rotating the starscape every 2 hours. I lay in my cot, watching constellations morph like slow fireworks, and wondered if the Terran Council would remember to send someone to retrieve my remains. Or at least my shoes. They were good shoes, comfortable, worn in just right. Somewhere below, the Queen probably watched my acceptance replayed on 100 different hollow screens. Aralva was probably sharpening her Vikesh with ceremonial oils and planning which part of my anatomy to target first. And me? I just hoped I could make it through tomorrow without throwing up in front of royalty. "Duel of honor," I whispered to the stars. What could possibly go wrong? Dawn on Elendar Prime did not arrive quietly. It announced itself with orchestral resonance emitted from the sky itself, some kind of atmospheric sonification ritual that translated solar radiation into sound. Which meant I woke up to what could only be described as a space whale doing jazz scales directly into my eardrums. I rolled out of bed, bleary-eyed, mumbling something about regretting every career choice that had led me here. The ceremonial robes laid out for me shimmered with reactive nanofibers that pulsed to my heartbeat, a fashion feature that felt wildly inappropriate considering mine was thundering like a stampede. The drone, Riga, hovered into view holding what looked suspiciously like a breakfast smoothie but glowed like liquid plutonium. "You require electrolytes." "I require a time machine and a wormhole back to Earth." "The time machine has not been authorized. Please drink." I did. It tasted like electrical fire and optimism, mostly electrical fire. The arena was not what I expected. Floating above the capital city's crystalline towers, it was suspended by invisible force fields and open to the elements, or whatever counted as elements on a planet with a magnetic field that sang. Transparent walls shimmered around the perimeter, offering just enough psychological comfort to make you think you wouldn't fall off. Comforting. Aralva was already there when I arrived, standing in the center of the arena like she'd been carved from obsidian and intimidation. Her armor gleamed, her Vikesh glowed faintly at the edges, and her expression had the warmth of a glacier on strike. She didn't speak. She just nodded once. The Queen arrived shortly after, accompanied by a procession of nobles, guards, and at least 3 floating platforms covered in ceremonial fruit. No one explained why. A chime echoed across the arena, an announcer's voice, sonorous and otherworldly, projected into the space. "Right of proven worth, staff form, combat to disarm, begin." No countdown, no whistle. Just immediate movement. Aralva moved like a shadow given purpose, blades spinning to life with an unsettling hum. I raised my staff, an alloyed composite laced with kinetic feedback sensors, and braced myself for impact. She struck first, fast, clean, precise. I blocked, barely. The shock reverberated through my arms, triggering a series of warning pulses from my wrist implant. I dodged left, Or tried. My foot caught the edge of the arena's force field. It hummed disapprovingly. Excellent footwork, I muttered to myself, truly balletic. Aralva's next strike came low. I hopped, yes, hopped, and swatted her blade with the end of my staff. The move looked better in my head. In practice, it was like watching a giraffe attempt fencing. The crowd murmured, or laughed, I couldn't tell. "Are you attempting humor?" she asked between strikes. "It's either that or panic," I replied, ducking. And I didn't bring enough towels for panic. She pressed harder. I began to notice something strange. Her strikes were flawless but predictable, like a program running through established routines. She expected a worthy opponent to meet her with equal force, equal formality. Instead, I tripped, on purpose. Kind of. Rolled, poked her ankle with the staff's blunted end. It caught her off guard, not much. Just enough for her to retreat 2 steps, reassess, and adjust her stance. The audience fell into a hushed murmur, not shock, not awe, curiosity. "Your tactics are chaotic," she said. "Thank you. I studied at the esteemed Academy of Flailing, and improvised regret." She didn't smile, but her next strike was slower, measured, not a test. A conversation. I met it with a spin, using the momentum to redirect instead of resist. Our staffs clashed again, and for a moment I saw it, she was listening. Not to my words, but my rhythm. She wasn't just a warrior. She was a translator of movement. So I told her a joke with my feet. I stumbled left. She parried right. I faked a drop, then vaulted the staff over my shoulders like some bizarre baton pass, flipping it back to my right hand as she closed in. The unorthodox move bought me just enough time to backpedal and breathe. "You are not trying to win," she said. "I'm trying not to die, huge difference." "No, you're trying to disrupt." "That's my thing, strategic inconvenience." The queen watched from above, her eyes sharp, observing, calculating. Aralva came at me again, but slower, not tentative, analytical. This time when our weapons met, I could feel the change. She was playing, testing, adjusting her tempo to match mine to see if I could keep up. And somehow I did. Strike. Parry, twist, tap, fake. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't honorable, but it was effective. At one point I rolled between her legs, smacked her calf with the tip of my staff, and popped up behind her like a malfunctioning circus act. The crowd gasped, then laughed. Aralva froze. I thought I'd gone too far. She turned to face me. Her eyes met mine. One corner of her mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. Then she came at me with a speed that erased air. I barely blocked. Her blade caught my staff and spun it out of my hands. I lunged, grabbed the edge of her weapon mid-swing, and used the momentum to spin myself back to my feet. We were chest to chest, her blade to my neck. My staff somehow jammed between her knees. We stood like that for 5 seconds, and then she stepped back. "My weapon is immobilized," she said, "and mine is about to give me a hernia." She lowered her head. I yield. The arena erupted, not in chaos but in astonished applause. Not because I won. I hadn't, not really, but because I survived, and because she had acknowledged something rarely admitted in Elendari combat: adaptation. Queen Seralith stood. "The rite is concluded. The Terran has proven worth." I dropped my staff. "Do I get a badge or maybe a t-shirt?" Aralva turned to me. "You fight like a malfunctioning loader drone." "I've been called worse." I did not say it was ineffective. She walked away. The queen watched her go, then turned her gaze to me. I gave the slightest shrug. "Your radiance, I remain inconveniently alive." She smiled, not a big smile, just enough. Enough to make me worry. The diplomatic quarters were quieter than usual, which should have been a comfort. Instead, it felt like the kind of quiet that comes before someone decides you're either a hero or a liability. In my case, the Elendari court hadn't made up its mind yet. Neither had I. Riga hovered beside the window, adjusting its lens. Statistical analysis indicates a 47% chance your display in the arena will be declared culturally interesting, rather than offensive. I sipped from a steaming cup of something called Zelev root infusion, which tasted like pine needles soaked in battery acid. And the other 53%, public execution or honorary status. There is much overlap in Elendari terminology. Fantastic, I muttered. Let me know when we drop below 40%. That's when I usually start writing goodbye letters. The door chimed, not knocked chimed. Elendari doors preferred musical entrances. The notes were different each time. Today, S was a descending minor fifth, which sounded like disappointment wearing perfume. A palace aide entered. She had the same elongated ears and jewel-toned eyes, but she looked like she hadn't decided whether I was a creature or a curiosity. Her radiance invites the emissary to private audience. Now. I blinked. Now, or ceremonial now. She didn't answer, just turned on her heel. Riga spun in a circle. High probability of non-lethal engagement. Still, please refrain from humor unless explicitly requested. I straightened my collar down the rest of the Zeliv and followed. If I don't come back, tell Earth I died doing what I love, being deeply confused. The walk through the palace was a blur of vaulted ceilings, gravity-defying architecture, and things that sparkled ominously. I was escorted into a high chamber ringed by hovering data glyphs, each humming in harmonic pulses. In the center, Queen Seralith Vey stood beside a crystalline table shaped like a chessboard, and nothing like one at all. You came, she said. I got the invitation and everything. Would have RSVP'd, but the palace Wi-Fi is passive-aggressive. She gestured to the table. Do you play? Diplomatically, or the game? She smiled, yes. The pieces on the board weren't solid. They shimmered like projections, shifting between states. Knight, tower, sphere, wisp. She didn't answer, just tilted her head. There is unrest. Because of me. Partly because of what you represent. Let me guess, change. Possibility. That's just change with better PR. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Some in this court believe Terra should not be offered alliance. Some in my delegation believe Elendari ears are designed solely to improve hat-wearing capacity. We all have our biases. There is a faction, she continued, who view your duel as a breach. Aralva's loss is their rallying point. I didn't ask her to lose. Honestly, I expected to be vaporized and memorialized with a commemorative mug. She could have defeated you. I suspected. She chose not to. I paused. Why? You should ask her. The meeting ended as abruptly as it began. I was escorted back to my quarters under heightened security, now with 2 guards who looked like statues but breathed louder. One of them sniffed every few minutes. I wasn't sure if it was allergies or judgment. Later, Riga informed me I had a visitor. Unscheduled, possibly volatile, statistically significant eyebrow arch detected. Aralva entered without ceremony. Her armor was gone, replaced with a sleeveless tunic that somehow made her look even more dangerous. Her ears twitched once. You survived. So did you. We're both terrible at dying. You were reckless. It's my best trait. That and my ability to quote Earth sitcoms out of context. She crossed the room, stood in front of the window, arms folded. They think I let you win. I said nothing. I didn't. I still said nothing. But I did choose not to end it. That sounds suspiciously like the same thing. You fought without malice, without rage. You mocked everything. I mock what scares me, keeps the acid reflux down. She turned to face me. They are planning something. They being traditionalists, nobles, the old order. Please don't tell me they meet in candlelit caverns and chant things. They meet in private chambers and chant things. Of course they do. You embarrass them and me. I thought we were past the embarrassment stage. We've already seen each other's fight faces. Her expression didn't change. You need to be careful. I'm always careful. I just hide it behind reckless decisions. She stepped closer. I will be watching you. Are you always this charming, or am I just special? No, you are just irritating. I raised a mock salute. Terran's specialty. She left without another word. I waited until the door sealed, then turned to Riga. Start a new list, I said. Title it, People who might kill me or save me depending on the weather. Riga chirped, creating folder now. Diplomatic banquets on Elendar Prime were a mix of delicate choreography and unspoken threats. Everyone was smiling, but some of the appetizers hissed when you got too close, and at least one noble wore a dagger on each ear, balanced like earrings made by someone who'd lost a bet. I sat at the far end of a long, levitating dining platform, a position clearly reserved for visiting dignitaries who were either too new to trust or too annoying to sit next to the queen. In my case, probably both. The first course was a translucent orb filled with something that wriggled when looked at directly. I poked it with my fork. It squealed. Riga, floating just behind my shoulder, leaned in helpfully. Protocol advises consuming the orb whole. It symbolizes the acceptance of foreign unknowns. Great, cultural symbolism and gastrointestinal roulette. I swallowed the orb. It exploded in my mouth like citrus-flavored static electricity. My tongue went briefly numb, then hot, then suspiciously fluent in a dialect I didn't know existed. Across the table, one of the nobles, a wiry Elendari with a crest of silver embedded in his forehead, watched me chew with visible disdain. His name was Lord Vareth. I knew this because he'd already told me twice, each time with an emphasis on the title like it was a performance he expected applause for. "You consume the living pearl with irreverence," he said, his ears flicking downward. "I consume most things with irreverence, especially if they try to flee." He did not laugh. Beside him, another noble snorted in a way that might have been agreement or indigestion. I leaned forward. "So, Lord Vareth, are all your meals this sentient, or is this just the fancy stuff?" He didn't respond. Instead, he turned to Aralva, seated further down the table, and said something in their native dialect. I didn't catch it, but the tone suggested I'd just been demoted from amusing oddity to pest with limbs. Aralva didn't answer him. She was focused on her drink, a shimmering red solution served in a gravity-suspended spiral. When her eyes finally met mine, there was a flicker of warning behind them. Later, as I attempted to make small talk with a bioluminescent ambassador from a moon colony who kept referring to me as the upright anomaly, I saw Aralva slip quietly out of the banquet hall. Alone, that was unusual. She was never alone, especially not now. I excused myself using the universal diplomat's line. "Excuse me, I have to engage in a classified digestive process." Then I followed her. The palace corridors weren't empty exactly, but they were quieter than expected. The lighting shifted subtly with every step, responding to movement and intention. The walls weren't walls so much as reactive partitions, half solid, half suggestion. Aralva stopped near one of the smaller atriums, facing a cluster of suspended data threads that shimmered like starlight tangled in cobwebs. I hesitated, then approached. "Fancy seeing you here," I said. She didn't turn. "You followed me." "I told you I was bad at boundaries. These threads record every transaction made under royal seal. I usually record my transactions with receipts and vague guilt." She looked at me finally. "This one shows Vareth transferring coded funds to an unlisted channel." "Sounds suspicious." "It is worse than that. The channel is routed through a mining colony that no longer exists. So either he's funding ghosts, or someone's rerouting signals through abandoned space real estate." "Yes." Cool, just checking. How illegal is that on a scale from mild tax evasion to interstellar treason?" She turned fully toward me. "He is preparing something, a disruption, possibly an assassination attempt, possibly worse." I blinked. Define worse. If the queen were removed under ceremonial challenge, the court would default to ancestral hierarchy. Vareth's bloodline is one of the oldest. Oh, so a hostile takeover with extra sparkles. I need access to the vaults beneath the observatory. That's where he stores his ancestral records. And you can't just go in there. Not without raising suspicion. And you need someone who's already suspicious. She nodded once. "Right, of course. Send the guy who tripped during his own diplomatic greeting to break into an alien noble's ancestral archive. Nothing could go wrong. You're still talking. I do that when I'm terrified, also when I'm hungry, also when I'm breathing. She handed me a crystal disc. Insert this into the terminal marked with the sigil of the second moon. It will copy all local data and transmit it to a secure relay. Sure, totally normal Thursday night activity. You have 2 hours. Security resets after each cycle. And what happens if I get caught? They will likely imprison you for espionage. I frowned. Likely. There is a chance they will just dissolve you. Riga, add that to the list, right below death by entree. The sky above the Queen's orbital palace shimmered with the emerald glow of a passing comet, a rare celestial event scheduled years in advance, perfect cover for a coup, apparently. I adjusted the collar of my ceremonial robes, which were still smoking slightly from an earlier incident involving a malfunctioning drone and an overloaded espresso replicator. It wasn't relevant, but it did set the tone. Aralva paced beside me, her expression somewhere between focused determination and someone deciding if betrayal justified paperwork. The Queen's procession begins in 14 minutes. If Vareth intends to move, it will be then. And here, I thought I was just here for the finger foods. You are here because you're unpredictable. Is that a compliment or a diagnosis? Both. Riga buzzed overhead, projecting a map of the palace. Intercept pattern calculated. Based on Lord Vareth's movements and current security weaknesses, the optimal ambush zone is Corridor 7 Gamma. Of course it's Gamma, I muttered. It's always Gamma. We moved quickly through the lower passageways, passing ceremonial guards, floating security drones, and one suspiciously friendly cleaning bot who offered us lavender-scented wipes. I took 2. It felt polite. Riga signaled. Thermal signature detected. 3 life forms approaching fast. We ducked into a shadowed alcove. Aralva's hand hovered over her Vikesh. Mine hovered over my emergency diplomacy card, which was really just a laminated napkin that said sorry in 14 languages. Vareth came into view flanked by 2 armored guards. He wore full ceremonial regalia, including a cloak that changed color based on proximity to treachery. It was currently a shade best described as impeachment maroon. I stepped out first. Evening, Lord Vareth, nice night for a betrayal. He froze. You should not be here. You should have picked a less dramatic time. There's a comet. No one's going to pay attention to your monologue with that in the background. Aralva moved in behind him. Step down now. He laughed. It was a sharp, polished sound. You have no authority here. You're right, I said, but I do have this. I tapped the data disk against the wall. A projection lit up, broadcasting the stolen archive data across the corridor. Transaction logs, private messages. Oh, and this delightful memo labeled Contingency Plan Alpha, overthrow with flair. Really on the nose, Vareth. One of his guards shifted, the other coughed. Vareth's ears twitched violently. You're bluffing, he said. I'd be more believable if I were, I replied, but you don't have to take my word for it. Behind us, 6 royal guards materialized from the walls, literally. Apparently, some of the palace's architecture doubled as security cloaking fields. Neat trick, terrible for privacy. The Queen stepped into view last, flanked by nobles and advisors. She didn't look surprised or impressed, just tired. Lord Vareth, she said, you have violated the right of loyalty and conspired against the throne of Elendar. Your lineage will be stripped of title, and your fate will be decided by the spire of judgment. Vareth sneered. You replace tradition with chaos. She gestured toward me. I replace stagnation with possibility. The guards moved in. Vareth didn't resist, too dignified or maybe just out of backup plans. The Queen turned to Aralva. You have served well. I only acted where tradition failed, Aralva replied. And you, the Queen said, looking at me. You continue to survive. It's my best skill, right after sarcasm and tripping with flair. Your actions tonight have secured our alliance. Terra will be recognized as a sovereign ally of the Elendari Empire. I'll try not to spill sauce on the treaty. She stepped closer. You've changed something here, not just politics. Expect consequences. I usually do, but I'm used to being unpopular at parties. She nodded, then walked away, flanked by advisors debating ceremony revisions and which colors counted as treason adjacent. Aralva stood beside me. You still fight like chaos incarnate. And yet here we are, alive and unvaporized. I was wrong about you. Which part? That you were a fool. You are in fact a strategic fool. I smiled. It's a brand. She offered a rare, almost smile. Perhaps next time, you'll accept a challenge without public theatrics. Only if I can still fall over dramatically at least once. We stood in silence for a moment, watching as the comet passed overhead. It glowed against the orbital palace's transparent dome, painting everything in shifting greens and silvers. So, I said, what happens now? You'll be sent back to Earth as a hero, decorated, celebrated, possibly used in recruitment ads. Great. Nothing says join the diplomatic corps like nearly dying in a glowing hallway. And I, she said, will be placed on indefinite leave, to reflect, to reconsider loyalty. Sounds dull. It is a demotion. Want to come visit Earth? She raised an eyebrow. Are your corridors full of ambushes and politics? No, but we have pancakes and karaoke. She looked at me for a long time. I will consider it. We walked back through the corridors together. The palace was quieter now, calmer, as if the weight of something ancient had finally shifted. Riga hovered behind us, updating its logs. Conclusion. Probability of survival exceeded original projections by 280%. I'll take those odds, I said. And your report? Riga asked. I thought for a moment. Tell Earth that diplomacy still works. It just needs better footwork. And for the first time since I arrived, I didn't feel like a visitor anymore. I felt like I belonged. Just a little. Maybe enough. The observatory's sublevels were less majestic and more functional. Still adorned in crystalline architecture, but colder, more sterile. Riga accompanied me, projecting a holographic map that looked like spaghetti woven by a drunk topologist. Left here, it said. That's a wall. Incorrect. That is a phased corridor. Step forward. I passed through like walking into a pool made of static. My skin prickled. My soul filed a complaint. The archive chamber was quiet. Rows of suspended memory crystals floated in containment fields. A single terminal pulsed softly near the center. The sigil of the second moon shimmered on its surface.